for a Doomfist. It's going to be Shailin on that first. Hong Kong Attitude defending. You like to imagine here, if it is a successful defense, this is going to be a very quick map for Hong Kong Attitude as well.
These will just be scouting picks for Rocket and Pichu. Sombra gets to see a bit of the back, and the Hanzo checks ready forward positioning. Pichu, there we go, translocating back, opting into a Moira.
Yeah, that's the smart move up against a Doomfist. If it wasn't Doomfist there, he'd probably be playing a Zen. Right now, it's about this opening sort of damage output and sort of interception from Hong Kong. You note that Perfect's already on 45%.
That already says a lot, doesn't it? I mean, Pichu is actually charging up relatively quickly as well, but it tends to be the way with things with Moira. But that coalescence early in this engage could be very pivotal.
And it certainly will be, as Hong Kong Attitude now need to really consider Giant Esports moving on top of the point. That is where Giant do want to be fighting, so Giant now in the ideal position.
Hong Kong Attitude don't have a lot at their disposal right now, just kind of fishing for a pick, and they find one. Shailin's able to thread the needle there to find Rocket, gets out with his life as well. Now it's just a straight 6v5 with Hong Kong Attitude getting closer to their ultimate.
You know what's out of position?
Giant are, and that's a really unfortunate charge. Leaves him a bit isolated. Good catch on the side on BK, but Giant are really zoned off this point right now.
And the EMP was already used by Perfect, by the way, so right now we need to see some sort of commitment.
There it was with the coalescence. You see that double beam action coming through there, but again, still Rocket, who was only just rejoining the team, got fragged off to the side, and now with those ultimates having run out, Giant just getting smacked about here. Hong Kong Attitude only just rotating into their ults now. They were able to use their Transcendence and Primal Rage, and that was just enough to get them through.
And Perfect's now charged 70%, in fact 71%, off the back of already using an EMP in the middle of that fight. An EMP that wasn't fully committed upon by Hong Kong Attitude. You'll notice as soon as the Coalescence are used by Pichu, that's when Hong Kong Attitude went, because that is when Moira is actually very vulnerable. You can't shift away when you're using the ultimate, and Shailin knows that.
You know, Perfect just farming up, got about another 10% off the back of that. So now, big bump up by Shailin. They're just waiting to get the recommit. Perfect's a little bit off to the side in this fight, though, which is a little awkward. They're still able to thread the needle on Pichu once again. So, Shailin doesn't even need to look for anything here. Giant have backed off.
It's heads-up play coming out from both Ting and CQB there as well, using the Nano Booster, get some extra damage and to really push Giant back. You don't want to be using a Graviton Surge. You don't want a Graviton Surge onto one Winston. It's not really good value. Right now, the engagement, the EMP.
Really nicely placed there with the self-destruct already thrown out by BK. They had the angle, they had the setup there and just timed it so right. And again, now it all just becomes cleanup. Hong Kong Attitude so well entrenched here, cycling through these ultimates very cleanly. Next will be a Primal Rage. Might even be able to get a Transcendence up in time as well for this next fight.
Which, by the way, for Mango Jai is going to be the most important ultimate for this defense. Giant Esports now have tools to use. They have Graviton Surge, they have Earthshatter as well. There are no good defensive options here. A team can stall with the Primal Rage, but stalling is not necessarily winning. It's just buying time. Time that Mango Jai needs to get a Transcendence going if they want to survive.
And they knew Shailin was up there, but they couldn't do anything to actually contest him. So now they just commit knowing that he will pincer in from behind. They still actually make a decent bit of headway, but again, losing Sage and God before any kind of grab can come out. How many times are we going to have to say that when we see this team play? Now losing Sun Series mech. Tituat did actually commit an Earthshatter there, but not sure what happened to it, whether it got blocked or just wasn't good enough. The connection maybe not there.
EMP.
EMP, maybe not too necessary, but they are just looking to make sure this fight gets secured. Still just shy of a third here is Giant, and that's a real heartbreaker. Very late in the day with the Coalescence, does finish off a team, secures a third, now pushing for 2.
This is where Shailin going down really hurts Hong Kong Attitude as well. The EMP does collect somebody. You need more frags than that. Giant Esports have the closest spawns. And what you did actually see was a bit of an awkward commencement of the push. Sage and God went onto the side room, died to Perfect there, while the rest of Giant Esports were trying to push on top of the point. The Earthshatter doesn't connect well because there's not enough members and no Graviton Surge to follow up with damage. Going on to B now, Giant Esports still have 4 minutes. Perfect now freshly onto a Mei to try and split up the Scots.
That could have nearly been a full hold there. Like you said, I think Shailin going down was the real problem. But yeah, nice split to start with here. And that's going to be a finish off on at least Rocket. Not quite getting Tituat, but without the Lucio, it's hard for Ghost to retreat. So now Tituat will get finished off. Trying to isolate some more members here by the looks of things, and it is paying off.
And this is where getting some extra damage, winning this defense for Hong Kong Attitude gets them 5 ultimates. The only one they don't have is the Blizzard, because it is a fresh swap onto the Mei as well for Giant Esports. This is going to have to be a full reset. That's the snowball gone now for Hong Kong Attitude, able to continue stalling things out, able to set up for the next fight, and able to have something to defend against an eventual Graviton Surge. But based on Hollywood, VK's been pretty hungry for grabs today, and he's been fed twice.
Perfect, getting himself some decent high ground still as the angle for that May wall. Makes it a little bit harder for him to follow up directly. Has to use that right click and otherwise rely on Shaolin and Co. Just waiting for the right time. Nice high ground push by Giant. They've avoided that wall to start with, but Nano Boost in onto a ting. Oh, good bump off the edge, but Shaolin still found one from the backside. The wraparound is all still there. This one has made the split happen. You see the Meteor Strike coming into the mix as well. Doesn't get any kills directly, but it's just keeping the pressure on Giant, who have still been unable to use the majority of the ultimates they've banked up.
There you go, Pixie going to Zen now, and for Giant Esports as well, they're consistently losing a member to somebody. It's a ting distracting, having the Nano Boost put on top of him. CQB now halfway, in fact, more than halfway towards his next one. High value and high returns on these ultimates. They seem to use one and then get about 50% back before the next fight even starts. And Shaolin just able to find early picks, and for Giant, they need the 6v6, but all they're getting is 5v6 at best.
That's one of the benefits of playing against GOATs, is they're just big ult batteries. You land a lot of shots into them, you get a lot of ult charge, generally speaking, especially if you're getting the kills and you're getting big routes as well. Don't really need to stop the bleeding at this point. Decent wall splits off a good chunk of members, but not perfect commit here. But now the Blizzard out into the middle of, roughly the middle of the point itself, leaves Sergeant God out in the cold. Mushroom rallying off to the side, but that's not going to help Tita1. Now Sun Series looking to take a dive.
And it's the environmental displacement as well. Note that it's not just the May Ice Wall coming up. A few members got knocked onto the low ground there for Giant Esports on their push, while the rest of the members maintained on the high ground, playing into a blizzard. Sergeant God was bubbled up for himself for the majority of the blizzard, but going out was still stuck in it regardless. Gets himself taken down. No opportunity to really use a Graviton Surge because, again, Giant Esports as a six-man unit are never together properly as six for one reason or another.
It's just a little bit of a heartbreaker. Now Giant Esports, so many ultimates in the bank, but you've got to consider.
It's a hard rotate.
That's the grab Sergeant God has had this entire game so far, and I believe that's only 5 members through here as well. There's Pichu finally able to join the team.
It doesn't hit.
Grab from Sergeant God, absolutely whiffed into the middle of nowhere. First one he's been able to commit all game despite having it this entire time, and now Giant getting cleaned up in one of the most awkward of spots imaginable. Less than a minute on the clock, less ultimates than what they started that fight with, and Hong Kong Attitude are banking them back up again.
And this is desperation coming out of Giant Esports. You can start to feel it from the members now. It's thinking, oh, I've held on to these ultimates for too long. We haven't found any good engages. They're still not finding good engages, and now they'll continue to not do so because they're not able to get value on the ultimates. They're using them in losing situations, whiffing them at important times. Less than 30 seconds remaining, and like you said, they're going into this next fight worse off than they were before.
Perfect's just waiting for it. Ooh, nice move around the side, avoids that wall for now. Oh, no, hold on. Tried to double out, but
they made it.
End up going straight into it. Yeah, they all make it through. The Earth Shatter completely wide. That's not the greatest of blizzards, though. It doesn't really get anyone. It just kind of isolates Sergeant God, but hey, that's more than enough for them here. Giant just losing far too many members on this final fight. No one left near enough to the point to contest it. Now Hong Kong Attitude in a great position to close it out. A tie is still a win in this series. Yep. Even a full hold on B is not good enough for Giant.
You can see right towards the end there, just the perfect example of how you split up that offense from Giant Esports. Sergeant God and another member stuck onto the low ground. And you want Sergeant God, the Zarya, with the main team. In fact, you want all 6 together. But once you're pushed off from that high ground as Giant Esports are trying to posture on that main cap point, that's a big difference. You split your team up in a 2 and a 4, and the 2 is getting cleaned up by Shaolin as the Doomfist. The 4 is not getting much work done either from the rest of Hong Kong Attitude. So, for Giant Esports, on that entire offense, just completely separated, disrupted, and put into disarray by Hong Kong Attitude. Very well played by Hong Kong Attitude, extremely clean.
That was part of the use of the Blizzard there as well, as it just cuts off the path for Sergeant God. You've got 2 options. Run into the Blizzard knowing that you will not make it all the way through. You will get frozen and most likely killed, or stay where you are with your back up against the wall and hope that you don't die for that duration, and then maybe the team can come to your rescue. The team's not going to go there instantly. They don't want to get zoned into the Blizzard. They don't want to be trapped up against the wall. It is a classic rock in a hard place kind of situation.
It doesn't get any easier now for Giant Esports. It's out of the frying pan and into the fire. And speaking of up against a wall, this is now the defense that has to swing things around significantly, and there is time for Hong Kong Attitude to make adjustments if things do not go well for them. And Giant Esports, it's kind of a one and done here. It's the Winston Goats for them. They have to be aggressive here. They need to find early fights, and for Hong Kong Attitude, they know how to win this. It's going to be building up an EMP for Perfect. Well, this could be a scouting Sombra, it could be wrong there, but either way, it's going to work out well.
Does get spotted, and is indeed just a scouting Sombra, so Perfect now moving over onto the Zarya. And hey, why not?
The other way you play for a long game here is you know the Ryan has an advantage against the Winston in terms of the ultimates once you get the Earth Shatter. Right now, she's looking for the early kills, the early damage, and long rotation.
Nicely done as well, isolating T1, who has to make a leap. That would have had him off the edge anyway. Even though he gets picked off by Mango Giant in mid-air, that is a rough start for Giant. T1 kind of caught out in that rotation. Now, it's worse. God's turn to get caught out. Mushroom landed a brief stun on Perfect, but no follow-up. This first point's going to be a wash.
And it's just one member after the other. Hong Kong Attitude do not lose anybody. It's a complete, utter dismantling of that Giant Esports defense. You see the way they find T1. No, they've got him on his heels, chase him all the way around the map. Even if they failed to clean up the kill, they've significantly damaged him. They've also rotated into a decent position for themselves. And now 6 members alive going to this push. They have the ultimate advantage. They need to probably stall out this fight for a while. And already Giant Esports too slow.
Yeah, just really dragging their feet on the collapse. And that gives Hong Kong Attitude so much pressure on the point itself.
Nearly
capped. And that's with Sun Series out of the mech. T1 low, nearly down. They do trade one back on Shaolin, but if too many members die here, Giant don't have time to wait for resetting members. Sajin God not going to be rescued by that Transcendence. They're keeping the pressure up on T1. There's going to be a grab, not really going to get much from Perfect. Throws himself destruct forward, and finishing Pichu is just enough. T1 goes down. Despite having a Primal Rage, Ting finding that charge is so huge. Now Sun Series D-Mech, Mushroom absolutely necked by the Fire Strike. That is going to be Hong Kong Attitude closing out the series 3-0. Now the question is, will they get their third 4-0 running?
And you see there from Hong Kong Attitude as well, because they only had 1/3 to cap, as soon as any members from Giant Esports step off the point, the entire game is over from that stage. Hong Kong Attitude setting themselves up for that sort of offense by completing a hold onto B on their defense as well, not giving away a single tick. And then on one attempt for both the attack on A and the attack on B, in one swift push, they get both the caps back to back. And Hong Kong Attitude, a team that based on the way they're playing right now, you could describe as a team with no hesitation. And for Giant Esports, unfortunately, a team that is far too hesitant. And for the virtue of patience there, unfortunately for them, it means now they can only fight for this last remaining map.
At this point, what Giant need to be focusing on is tidying up the problems in their play. Now look, yeah, that's always the case for a team, but now you're doing it with a slightly different goal in mind. Look, the reality is they are now mathematically eliminated. There's no way they make it through to playoffs. They're definitely going into relegations, and it is going to be tough to get back in for next year's Season 1. Less teams overall. It's going to be a very tough fight for this team, right? They are still doing good things. They are putting themselves into good positions and good situations. They're not just totally lagging behind on the macro game or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's other issues with the execution that are at play, and those could be tidied up. A lot of this does just seem to be an issue of timing and willingness to commit. So if they can tidy that up, there's still a bit of a future for what is actually a new team this season, despite having a lot of old members in it.
Yeah, and it is a confidence thing that I'm seeing as well. Now, they also just, as well as this upcoming map for map number 4 in the series, they do still have a guaranteed match next week again, and they will be playing Phoenix there, so a chance to get something on the scoreboard before the season ends for them. It could still be a 1-4 here instead of an 0-5, which would be ideal for any team that's currently in the sort of bottom of the standings. But Giant Esports, anything they can clean up here, anything they can get does become a bit of a consolation prize. They need to try and grab any sort of map wins here to gain a little bit of that confidence back, stop Hong Kong Attitude from cleaning up that 4-0 like they've done so before.
And it's going to be tough. I mean, let's also be completely honest here. Hong Kong Attitude, this would be their third 4-0 if they do accomplish it.
It's actually telling that have 2 4s. Hong Kong actually don't actually have one.
Oh, no, you're quite right. Yeah, we're in Group B. I mean, Day 1 has been Group A every other week. It just threw me off. So actually with that, what we now have is, if I'm not mistaken, well, if they get it, it would be our first 4-0 in this group.
Yeah, it would be. So Talon so far are the ones
we've
back
had our first 5-game series in this group. Now we might have our first 4-0s.
There's a lot of firsts happening here.
Never mind everything else I was saying, but actually that does lead me into a slightly different point, but I think something equally interesting, actually, when you start to look at that comparative, you know, of Hong Kong Attitude and Talon trying to square each other up from opposite sides of the groups right now, and potentially opposite sides of the table moving into playoffs. They may only end up meeting in the grand finals if it goes all the way there. Hong Kong Attitude want to be starting to get the same kind of results as what Talon are getting in their group if they want to go into that with an amount of confidence that the teams are genuinely comparable.
As the other thing to remind, as a reminder here, is a sort of standard in play play. Every other team in Group B that has faced Hong Kong Attitude has gotten, at minimum, at least a draw against them, if not a straight-out map win. And the best result for Hong Kong Attitude so far was in Week 3 last week, a 3-0 against Phoenix. That includes a draw in the middle of there somewhere. So for Giant Esports, if they can at least maintain a draw or perhaps even a map win, they would be sort of at least standardized with everyone else. And it may happen here, at least it has to happen here. Route 66, the final map of the series.
Can't draw an escort though, so it's got to be a win or nothing. It's going to be, again, it's the tough thing about this. Hollywood was a bit of an interesting case, I have to say, because actually we did see the Streets phase was where Giant really started to get their stuff together a little bit. I will also say Hong Kong Attitude did mis-execute in a couple of places. We saw a grab go wide, we saw an overextension, and then when they finally sort of got themselves back to situation normal, they won pretty handily. But the point still remains, Giant did still win those fights, and they still won them well, and they still executed well in those fights. So there can be an element of consistency to this team. It could actually be that it's on payload defenses that they can really start to shine, where maybe that confidence does kick into gear. So they do still have a shot here.
Well, they need to be able to win a lot of fights in a row. You know, 1 or 2 fight wins, a win does not get you, unless like, you know, the two teams, for whatever reason, just don't meet. And they only fight twice for the entire map. But
I'll wait in the diner.
Yeah, just sit in the spawn the whole time.
I'll just let them rob the train, it's
but
fine.
You do need a relative high level of consistency here. Now, you can still lose a decent number of fights and then perhaps, let's say, get onto the C defense and then completely hold out Hong Kong Attitude. That is a way they can actually still win this. But
perfectly valid.
On their attack, they would have to be able to match that. So there's a decent amount of things in play here. You have to kind of get best of both worlds here. A really good offense or really good defense, and preferably both would get you that win. And a win is exactly what Giant Esports need. Like you said, no chance for a draw here, so it's all or nothing for them in this final match.
Nothing's going to stop Lucio except maybe Hong Kong Attitude. I mean, that is actually Hong Kong Attitude's Lucio. So.
Which is a real cereal, by the way.
Yeah.
I haven't tried that one out yet. And it is going to be Hong Kong Attitude defending first with a potential quad DPS coming out from Giant Esports. So this is very similar to what we saw from from Cyclone Coupling against Global Esports Pantheon just a little bit earlier. This is a great composition to play into GOATs.
I'm not as sure about the double sniper aspect, but I can see what the Huns attempts to do here. Siege Guard allows for a lot of pick potential, beats you in with the spam damage, and then you've got the Sombra EMP, so highly impactful.
Now, it's very important for Giant not to take too much damage here because they only have a solo healer. The goal is to be as slippery as possible. You don't want Hong Kong Attitude to catch you out, and all members of this team playing picks like Pharah and Widowmaker should be very difficult to catch.
Just trying to spam damage into the relatively contained Hong Kong Attitude. Losing T-Watt's so rough though, because that's a lot of their disrupt, and it makes these DPSs that bit more vulnerable for the time being.
And they need to focus damage onto a team here because he's the one contesting the cart for Hong Kong. Once there's no members that can contest the cart effectively, Giant Esports can start to get some momentum, but they need to play for the progression here, play the objective.
The weather forecast is cloudy with a chance of justice, so a team does need to be a little bit careful about that. At the very least, draw out VK, but there's that cart movement. That's going to be the commit from Hong Kong Attitude. All they blocked off is to carry a huge catch, though. And that means no barrage to come out of Pichu. Hong Kong Attitude reclaim possession of the cart now. They're going to be able to charge up some more ultimates too.
And all Giant Esports needed to do when they saw the sound barrier come through was just escape, get out of the way of Hong Kong Attitude. It's like a freight train that you don't want to be in the way of for Giant. Rocket just overstepped, found himself shield bashed as well, cleaned up. Pichu, he just follows extremely quickly after that. They have now EMP. They do also have a rocket barrage. This is probably the combo you need to see.
Nice catch onto Perfect as the EMP started to come out there as well. Not the big follow-up and route that they were looking for, though. So Hong Kong Attitude not out of the mix just yet, especially with T-Watt getting picked and Sun Series as well. Now Hong Kong Attitude actually have a leg to stand on if they want to push back, and indeed, that is the plan.
And actually, a Perfect's going to go onto the Soldier here to try and counter out some of the aerial damage from Pichu.
Oh,
Seems like Mango Jai is doing a pretty good job of that by himself, though.
Yeah.
As Honko Attitude still maintain control of this card. Now, below 2 minutes for the offense on Giant Esports, they have been stopped up.
Surging God's just yet to find anything. This time, though, Minefield out. Dragon Strike across finds
Effective.
2 members. Nice catch there. Also, I did not realize Perfect had even changed onto the Soldier until that point. Obviously, that has been part of the reset there. I do like the Soldier change, though.
And by the way, now going on to the McCree, which I was going to say is probably a better pick, considering you do need to catch out some of the slippery DPSs from Giant. A Flashbang will certainly help you do that. The problem here for Honko Attitude is they do need to also kind of protect this McCree. He can get picked off quite easily if he does get flanked or outsniped long range by the Widowmaker played by Saijin God.
They got a sort of super Kree. There we go. They find Saijin God. That's good opener. Titawat's looking for some kind of wraparound. Just wants to enable his DPSs. And Perfect needs to keep the pressure on Pichu and Rocket.
1 minute warning now for Giant Esports. They still need a lot more space. They need to get rid of this main tank in the middle. All right, now Ting has a Shatter. He's not really going to find a decent Shatter, so you're probably going to see a solo Shatter play come out just to find a kill. 1 kill here really swings things in their favor. It makes it difficult to resurrect as well. And Giant Esports, they need to start getting some more momentum on the card.
Ooh, that's a good something to open it up. Now lacking in the DPS department. They do trade with Saijin God, but there should be a big opening here for Giant if they can just pull the trigger, trying to get these members to wrap around. Nice Shatter and the Transcendence to come in from Mango Jai to stop anyone from going down on Giant. Oh, sorry, Hong Kong Attitude. Some members were quite low, and now suddenly Giant no numbers advantage to speak of anymore.
I was going to say it would have been good for a Ting just to get 1 on the Shatter. They gets 2, but gets Titaway. Titaway managed to sneak himself away. Rocket and Pichu not so lucky in that regard. EMP about to come online as well as the Dragon Strike, but they just need a lot more than this. Giant Esports right now. Mushroom even got to go to the Doomfist for this final engagement.
I do like that. It just gives them more forward pressure. Sun Series, though, already
lucky to get out alive.
Forces Rocket to come down to him as well, which leaves Rocket vulnerable, but there's the EMP. No follow-up, though. Sun Series already dead, and the Sound Barrier was able to come out. This is still just Perfect, putting free pressure onto the members of Giant as the tanks barrel up forward and deal with the rest of Giant. It's going to be a huge hold out of Hong Kong on Attitude.
And I think Giant Esports definitely took a risk there by playing the quad DPS. But the thing is, the team that is playing that quad DPS are the team that need to be executing before. Because for the defense there on Hong Kong Attitude side, as the 3-3 Goats team, they don't need to do anything too special.
Yeah.
Probably play for the card a little bit more to make sure that you are contesting the objectives properly. Probably play for a bit more cover, which is why at the start they were just hiding inside the train wreckage. But for them, if a brawl actually starts, the Goats team wins almost by default in that sort of scenario. So for Giant Esports, if they don't find the necessary damage, if they can't outpoke and alt rotation in terms of getting that damage in against that defense, then they're not going to get the cart moving, which is why you can see the final cart location just on the sort of towards the right of your screens there, just below Big Earls.
It's just refueling.
That's the total distance gained by Giant Esports because they never could find enough critical mass of kills against Hong Kong Attitude. Maybe they get 1, maybe they get 2, but Hong Kong Attitude seem to be able to respond with a lot more.
Yeah, that cart distance, to put it elegantly, is sweet stuff all. To be completely honest, I mean,
it needs to be at least around the next bend, because here, if you lose 1 fight, we've seen teams easily get this amount of distance off the back of 1 win.
Giants are great at losing 1 fight, I'll tell you that. At least in this matchup. Not to be too harsh to them in all fairness. Again, look, there have been these good moments for them, and the reality is this is the top of the table team playing off against the bottom of the table team, but now Hong Kong Attitude poised to not just secure their first 4-0, but to do so in, let's be honest, very dominant fashion.
And the way Giant is holding right now, you can see they're quite far back. They're not going to take this early train wreckage defense. It's going to get scouted up by Perfect anyway. He knows they're not there. And because they're not going to take this defense, there's no possibility of having fallback potential. They're going to be defending next to Big Earls, and if they lose the fight there, that's going to be the game over. They don't have another opportunity. They must win on all accounts. There is no room for error.
What they do have is high ground advantage in a Rhine Goats mirror matchup. They need to leverage that for all it's worth. Yeah, not anymore. I mean, and BK just able to do so much with that. None of them are on the roof of Big Earls here. This is just an all-out and out brawl.
They shouldn't be walking back.
Exactly.
They need to be walking forward.
Ceding space for free. When are they going to contest? When are they going to actually get into the thick of a fight here?
You can start to see the cart just inching forward, and it's about to hit the finish line of Giant.
You know what? Oh, Bash nearly had him, but Nice barrier to come in from Sergeant God. They are getting decent ultimate charge, but again, Perfect is now just starting to strip ahead of Sergeant God.
And Mega Drive reads this correctly. He's playing to Anna. As the Bionade lands, it's big.
That is a huge catch onto VK, but there we go. Giant early rally, and they're able to get the follow-up on a Ting as well. So they're not just going to roll over on this one, but they need to finish charging the Earth Shatter and Grav.
And they need to do this about 3 or 4 more times. We talk about consistency here. We know that Giant Esports can win some of these defense. We know that they can win fights, but how many can they win in a row? Because right now, again, they can't afford to lose a single fight or they will be capped out.
Such a tight position, Hong Kong Attitude wasting no time moving up for some high ground, get some opening damage. T-Watt, oh, that's a huge shatter, but largely stopped up by the defensive ultimates. Not enough to save Mushroom or Sun Series, who was channeling a self-destruct. It finds nothing. And now a grab, but no one to follow up on it. Pichu's down, Rocket's down, Sergeant God absolutely destroyed by Perfect, and it is going to be it. Hong Kong Attitude just rolling that card over the last few meters as T-Watt gets popped. That's going to be the 4-0 in style.
It is, and Giant Esports just throwing everything at Hong Kong Attitude that they had. Double support ultimates, and they still lost 2 members in the middle of that defense. Hong Kong Attitude were not going to be pushed any further than that. They were not going to be defended against any further than that. 2 attempts out of them, manages to get across the finish line. A 4-0, finally their first 4-0 in Group B of the season so far. And this is going to be a big win that now puts Hong Kong Attitude at 4-0, still undefeated in this group. And Giant Esports, unfortunately, at 0-4, still yet to pick up a win in this group.
And with that, Hong Kong Attitude, who were already through, only furthered their lead and all but guarantee a first place finish. The only foe in front of them still is Cyclone Coupling. And also with that, Giant Esports are officially mathematically eliminated. They may have technically been earlier today, I'm not quite sure, but that math doesn't matter anymore because that 0-4 seals the deal. Even 1 map win back. Yep. Even with Phoenix losing 2, the differential is just too great, and there's no way they can break into that top 4.
Speaking of differential, it's got +11 for Hong Kong Attitude. Even if they lose next week against Cyclone Coupling, they go to 4-1. Maybe they pick up a single win. Let's say they get an 0-4. If Global Esports Pantheon do pick up a win, putting themselves at 4-1, even with 4 maps there at +7, they do not match Hong Kong Attitude. If that wasn't enough, Hong Kong Attitude does also beat Global Esports Pantheon in week 1 for the head-to-head. So in all accounts, for all the ways you tie-break this, Hong Kong Attitude, congratulations. They are now #1 in Group B.
And they did come into here as the group favorite, so that's not too surprising, but securing it is still another matter, especially when it has been against some quite tough teams. They'll probably be quite pleased with Global Esports just behind them in the standings that they got to play them a little bit earlier on when Global Esports were still finding their own feet a little bit. Exactly. It was a relatively competitive match, and the matches for Hong Kong Attitude have got less and less competitive insofar as they're winning better and better. They are looking in increasingly good shape as we move towards the playoffs.
And we do still have a game here, another match to finish off the evening with. There are 4 more teams still trying to break into the top 4 and only 3 spots remaining. The next match coming up is between New Paradigm and Phoenix, 2 teams towards the bottom that both want to make that playoffs position. To find out what happens, we will be taking a bit of a break, so make sure you don't go too far away. Overwatch Contenders Pacific continues after this.